Alright, so when we talk about knife fluidity, we're not just talking about strike to strike, we're also talking about, especially in a grappling range, we're talking about the ability to use our knife motion to set up our body motion, keeping it together and making sure that there's no two separate things going on in order to achieve the same goal, which is to protect myself. So I want the ability for me to move and grapple with my knife the same way I would to cut and to move around just by striking. Everything is one solid motion. And so what we're going to do is we're going to work off of a straight thrust here that James is going to throw, and it's just going to be a generic thrust. Okay, we're going to assume that we have the ability to go to the outside. Again, it's not going to happen like that all the time, but we're going to do a quick block check counter. The first thing that I need to focus on is the reposition. So even if I don't get the cut, I still want to put myself in a position where I can work or essentially get away and essentially just be safe. Okay, so the thrust is going to be here. I'm going to try to cut and I'm going to jam. So that's my block check. And now, depending on how this goes, will determine what is going to come next. So my position is always going to determine what technique I'm going to do. For the first technique, we're going to go block check, and we're going to go over the top here. I'm going to go towards the chest, and from here I'm going to use my stab to slash method. I'm going to turn my palm up. I'm going to go through the neck and finish it there. Now, it doesn't always have to be like this. Okay? If I don't want to be so lethal, if I just want to retain, the idea is using the stab to slash method to bring it back into my body and away from it being outside, being able to be grabbed and manipulated. So I can use this motion here. If by chance James wants to fire back, I am behind the shoulder so I can use it to jam. Okay, so being behind the shoulder, I'm using my opponent's shield, his own body as a shield. So I get into that same position here, I come over the top, I use this to retain, and as he tries to fire back, I can also turn into a submission here. Okay, so all I'm trying to do is make sure that I'm behind the blade, and a lot of the times that's the more safer place to be. Now we go into that same position. This time, hypothetically, we do the block check, and we end up creating much more space, exposing James's abdomen. Now I'm going to go underneath. So as I go underneath here, I'm going to turn this into a stab to slash again, and also I do not need to slash, but I will use the blade as a way to guide me through. I'm going to cut from hip to hip. I'm going to enter through the shoulder. I'm going to hook on with my left hand. Whether I'm double under, whether I'm under over, doesn't really matter as long as I get a 2-on-1 position here. I can use this to manipulate, I can walk the base, and at any given point I can use this to finish or set up a disarm. Okay, so again, my position here, depending how strong this is, will determine what I'm going to do. I'm not going to predetermine that. It's the position, it's the angle that I've created. Okay? Now, let's just say that I don't have the knife. Part of it being a fluid motion is that I should be able to implement it with or without it. It's still a knife concept. So I go into the block check. This time I'm using my hand, and there could be a hit. Again, you don't have to hit whatever it is, but I'm going to use the same pattern, cutting from hip to hip, to enter through the shoulder, using a shoulder as a shield. Again, I'm behind the weapon, clamping on nice and tight, isolating the threat, and then using my body and my core to determine his base, potentially break it, take him down, whatever it is I plan to do. We go back to the first technique. I can do the same thing. I come over here, hit the head, and if he decides to fire back, I still have the shoulder. Okay? So for the last technique, what we're trying to do now is we're trying to eliminate any possible failure. So I can't always assume I'm going outside. Even if I try to incorporate and try to influence my position to the outside, sometimes it doesn't work. So in this case, I decided to go a little more narrow in, so I'm going to go in with a jam, whether that's two hands punching, whether it's one hand grabbing and cutting. I'm getting it into almost a stalemate position. Okay? Then I'm going to come back with my knife here, and I'm going to try to bait out this hand. Okay? And the reason why I'm doing this is because when we're dealing with the stalemate here, this is stuck here, but it's not going to always have to stay there. So if I try to work my way back to the outside, I don't know if he's going to wrestle me. I don't know if he's going to twist, try to cut me. It's a lot safer going to this side over here. So I get into the same position. I try to jam here. I go as wide as I can. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go underneath the arm here. I'm going to loop around, and I'm going to grab to release, and my arm is already underneath the shoulder. So I've repositioned myself on the offhand side. I can have a 2-on-1. I can reposition, walk the base, cut if I wanted to, start to turn this into a takedown, a lock, whatever it is I try to do. Okay, so there's tons of things that we can do with or without the knife. The most fluid parts that we're focusing on is keeping them all together. being sure that everything is working as a total system. I don't have to think to use my knife or my body. It's all interconnected. And without the knife, it's still the same thing, even though it is a knife concept. So try those out. Make sure you guys practice the position. Angles are the most important part. If you guys haven't already, give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't as well. And until next time, catch you guys then.